Hey,
Hey,
Carl.
hey, Carl.
Michael and I haven't started the discussion on anything. Um, he and I tend to work together fairly frequently, so I'm not sure we'd have much to discuss.
That's
What's up with
cool.
you?
What are you guys working on?
So, Michael's helping me out with Reason Score. Um, First, doing research on the topic that I want to use in a sample video, and then now he's helping me write code.
Nice.
So, yeah.
It's been interesting, the whole gamut, starting from like just a question or an idea and figuring out all the domain specific terminology and just all the different rabbit trails you can go down, as well as now getting to like a user interface, user experience side of how do I want to represent this data and how will it best serve the point we're trying to make. It's interesting to just experience it. Yeah, it sounds cool. What is the topic?
So I'm still probably mentioned it before. So it's keto diet and heart disease.
Hmm.
So I got to figure that out before I die of a heart attack, or don't die of a heart attack, depending on.
Good.
And Michael's doing keto too, right? So
Oh,
we're
nice.
both biased.
Both have skin in the game, yeah.
Yeah, but we have an incentive to get it right because there's no use like thinking you're right and then dying. So yeah, should be fun.
Cool. Yeah, my only sort of update is from the past few weeks. I've just been diving a bit more into quotation verification. Um, so I've been learning just some of the challenges there because Howju has quotations and that says which URLs they're from. And I thought it would be nice to show people like a check mark if the quotation appears in the website. And there's challenges with that. Requesting websites, requesting web pages, it is its own challenge because a lot of people are behind Cloudflare. We want to block automated bot requests. I haven't had any problems with like JavaScript execution yet. I think a lot of people serve the page statically with the content, at least up front, just for efficiency.
And
So
SEO.
huh?
And SEO, so search engine optimization.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, to access some pages, I incorporated a third party just because they run a service for getting around, those like basically to provide a crawler. So I try to request the page directly if I can, and then if that doesn't succeed, then I fall back. And then finding text in a page is a bit of a challenge too. Yeah, it's just not always easy to find the text in the page and to figure out exactly which range in the page corresponds to the text you're looking for. I had an issue where the text as output by the page, like when you ask it, hey, what's your plain text? Has all this white space padding on the left hand side because I
Hmm.
think that's what the page itself kind of looks like. It's sort of, this middle justified paragraphs in the center, but then that makes it really hard to use an algorithm, like a naive text matching algorithm, because all of this extra white space on the side interferes. Like it's considered edits. Like you have to add white space to a run of text to make it left justified like that. And I think that was screwing with the algorithm. So I have a to do to try and improve that, like to see if I can basically get the text content without all of this white space padding. But for now, I'm kind of using just a best effort approach. And I was one of my to dos on that area is to add an approximate match. So it's like you get a green check mark if the text was exactly found. You get maybe like a yellow check mark if the text was found using the fuzzy search, but wasn't exactly the same, and then it'll show on the page what was found. And then various errors if it wasn't found.
Have you tried taking the text? Um, Because you're pulling up the web page and then pulling up the plain text of like the body element, right?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm requesting the HTML, I'm stuffing that into JSDOM
Yeah.
because everything right now, my stack is entirely JavaScript.
Hmm.
And then I'm asking it, so the libraries I'm using ask for the body's text content. So it's the body.text content that provides the plain text.
Yeah. So one thing that I do when I'm doing text searching is progressively, replace two spaces with one space
Mhm.
until I get no more replacements, and then I know everything's only got one space. And maybe also using some regex to strip out carriage returns and
Mhm.
line feeds and stuff, which I
Yeah.
guess you don't get back in the plain text maybe. But reducing double spaces to single might normalize it a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Like collapse all multiple spaces down to just one space or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Was Nick doing the same, something similar with ArgueFlow Vault from
I
last
need
week, I
to
thought?
chat with them. Actually don't know what their verification does. I think what they're doing, but I'm not sure. I think they probably request the page and then do a semantic similarity and be like, if it's semantically close, then we consider it to be the same. But I'm not sure. I mean, their problem's
Right,
a little
yeah.
different because their cards are like a whole web page. And so that's almost guaranteed not to be an exact match. Cause like if you do an entire web page of content, you're gonna have some little change here or there. But yeah, I'm actually not positive. It's only been this past week that I kind of considered myself like, well, actually now I'm not still not done because I want to finish that white space issue. But I'm like, okay, yeah, this works well enough that I think I can move on. So I need to circle back with them and see. I don't think they could use what I'm doing for the reasons I mentioned, like because I'm looking for sort of like a bit of a needle in a haystack. So it's like a quotation that's part of a web page, and they have an entire web page they want to, and they probably want to be a little bit more lax because of that issue. Like, hey, does this roughly look like the web page the person says it was? Yeah, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, that makes sense. That you're probably on the right track there.
Yeah. But what I'm working on now is adding that second feature of appearances, where I can say this proposition, like this standalone claim, appears, like Carl says it appears at this excerpt. And that's going to unblock me from doing what I kind of want to do now, which is say to do a fact check of a web page. So if I go to a page, whatever it is, like maybe it's the Lex Friedman podcast where he was interviewing RFK, or who knows what it could be. Basically pulling out what are the excerpts that interest me here, what are the claims that I think are present in them, and then what do I think they're true or false. And then I'll probably end up having to do some initial metrics there to show that, like in a summary view. Like if you're looking at Carl's fact check, or if you're looking at a search including these appearances in this source, what's the lay of the land for the justifications in those propositions? Like, is the consensus that the statement is false? Is the consensus that they're true? Is the particular user that you're searching for, do they think it's true or false? That's probably how I'll start, because that's what I'm interested in, is like just sharing with someone, hey, I read this, I spent 3 hours reading it and researching it, or maybe longer than 3 hours, and here was my conclusion. Do you have anything to contribute or talk about with it? See where we go from there.
And sorry, how were you doing? I remember you were talking about having like an entire service where this happens on like a content creator's video, or maybe like a Chrome extension where you're on the video and then you can kind of jump into it and extract it on top of it. Or are you pulling in the video to argue to how do you do?
So I'm not going to do video now just because would be a lot of extra work. I was going to do text. So right now what you can do is you can say, here's the link to the video, here's the offset that I say it's at, and then here's the link also that if you can, like, you can put in an offset link so the person can click and go directly to the video at the offset. So like YouTube supports links with time offsets, so a person could add that right there. So the video, I don't support embedding. That's something I would like to do. Say like show the video, actually on Howju. I'm not going to. I'm going to probably avoid ingesting media, I think, because I'm very nervous about all of the hairy issues that come up from that. You know, like people could put very offensive images onto Howju. And so I'd rather right now just link to things, or potentially embed from services that have their own content moderation, like YouTube or Twitter. Like you can embed certain things from well-known services, and that'd be okay. Sorry, but so you're does that kind of answer your question, or?
I think so, yeah. So you have a link to the source.
Yeah.
Have you, I've been thinking a bit about when you mentioned that, like this idea of having the service. Well, that's kind of probably a large endeavor. But if you have just like a Chrome extension, so you're on the source material and you're doing the, claim searches or verification or what have you as like an overlay on top of it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
find
that is-
that an interesting way to distribute it, I guess.
Yeah, that is definitely a next step I'm interested in. I have the beginnings of a Chrome extension. It was something I worked on, earlier before this sort of reboot in the past year. So I may need to revisit, just a little bit of the design and the approach. I would love for it to be like sort of a cross browser extension, because right now it's just Chrome only, because I just decided to focus on Chrome. But I tend to use Firefox most of my day-to-day, so it'd be nice just to have an extension that worked on both. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. You're at the page, maybe the little icon in the extension bar shows you something saying, hey, I have something to say, or maybe give you as much information as reasonable in such a small space. And then you like click it to turn it on, and then it does an overlay of being like, here's all of the excerpts, the quotes that have content, and like mouse over them or click on them or whatever to bring up the details, or to bring up a sidebar where we show you like, okay, here's the proposition the person thought appeared here. Here's the justifications people have added for being true or false. Yeah, that would definitely be something I want to do.
Yeah, that'd be super interesting. I've always wondered why a plugin like that hasn't taken over for even just like commenting on a website. So here's your community comments on this website that you're viewing. I mean, Hypothesis is kind of something like that. And I think there was other tries before. I can't remember what it was, but just like a sidebar that's always with you, that everyone can have comments on this site so you can see if it's true or not, or what your friends think or whatever. I'm just surprised that that hasn't actually been a thing yet.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I kind of wonder why it hasn't picked up more too.
I think they're actually, at one point, they were building that directly into Edge.
Okay.
Like you
Remember
were
what they
even
called it?
like able to like draw on the web page and stuff like that. And
Really?
don't know who
Interesting.
all could see it, whether it was completely open or public or teams or both. But that was one of that they were originally using that as a differentiating feature, but I don't know if they've pulled back on that. I haven't seen it in their marketing recently.
Like, yes, it's, I was saying the same thing. It just surprises me. Like, it seems like it would be such a valuable thing. Maybe it's just you can't monetize it. I don't know.
Monetizing it could definitely be one of the challenges, and it would take a fair amount of storage if it got popular.
There was another one that was trying down that route. It was Genius. Have you heard of Genius for like lyrics? So there's a
Oh, that rings a bell.
yeah, genius.com for lyrics. And then I think it was News Genius. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it was News Genius. They were starting to go down that approach of adding annotations to websites. And I don't know, it'd be a good question to like post-mortem that, like, why did that not succeed? Why is Hypothesis not taken off? Why is Edge not taken off with that feature? I know that, and this is my own, biased opinion, I'd be very nervous about allowing people to just make free form comments on a website and then exposing people generally to that. You're going to have some layers of moderation and, filters to get things out of there, regardless of the content. But like my opinion is that by trying to, that's what I'm looking for, kind of shoo people into sort of an epistemological mindset. Like you can only say that certain things are true or false. You can't just comment freeform. I think you're going to get a better experience, maybe, than just people can write freeform text, because people will write very offensive and very insane, useless things. I mean, they will do that in any system that allows free text entry, but I think it should be easier to remove things like that, both automatically and like it's easy to say, oh, you didn't even make a claim, so that's why that was deleted, versus if you delete a post from a site that claims to allow you to comment on anything, it's like, well, you know, who decides what you delete? Like you said we could comment on things, and I have to comment that I don't think is offensive. I don't know why they were offended, but that's their problem. And it's less of a PR issue, I think, if you try to like very much narrow what people are allowed to do. But I could be off base about that. Like maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to know why News Genius, because I think it got discontinued at some point. I know when I was looking into News Genius like a long time ago, I did find an occasion like that where some person had posted about like openly about like an STD they had gotten, like trying to, sort of like remove the stigma and provide a space for people to, you know, open up about it and just like, yeah, just let people, it happens to people. And she tried to, I don't know if she tried to sue, but she definitely like wrote against Genius saying like, why have you allowed people to deface my website? Because people left very offensive things then on her site, on this page. And, like in a sense, it wasn't on her site, because if you went to her site directly, it wasn't there, of course. But if people shared links to the Genius, sort of parser that would show her page with the markup, or if people were using the Genius extension or however they exposed it, I forget if they had an extension, then you would see, these offensive comments. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
moderation, that probably makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's a lot easier in our space where we're expecting people to make logical claims and stuff. I mean, the AI is getting to a point, and the natural language processing, that if they're not making a point, that if it's not expressed to a certain level of um, clarity, and just not saying things. I mean, it seems like you could pretty easily determine whether someone's just ranting, um, or if they're trying to make a point, and just being able to filter out a large portion, or if they're talking about something, if they're trying to sell a product or something, or spam or something. It's a lot easier to tell when you have a narrow goal of claims. So I
yeah,
think automated moderation will be easier for our tools than something more generic. But it's amazing because a couple years ago I would have thought that it's going to get a lot easier in the next year to kind of, at least you can hide things that are below a certain kind of like level of usefulness.
that's what I was going to say, is that like certain things should be removed if they're illegal, but I think there can be levels of filtering where you're like, hey, if you go here, like this is hidden for a reason, it's offensive. If you go here, where these things are not deleted, but you may not like what you see. Obviously it'd be worded differently, but and then I forget, I think at some point I wrote down a couple ideas for levels of filtering. But yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be removed if it's borderline. It can just be, I guess, so you could have automated, like, no one's looked at this, no humans looked at this, our team hasn't looked at this. You got like three levels. You could have AI thought that it was bad. Users crowdsourced thought it was bad, which could be sybiled or sock puppeted or whatever. Like, someone could, gang up and vote on something being bad, even if it wasn't. And then you could have the user, like the actual moderation team has looked into it and they also think it's bad. So it could be three ways of, I don't know how you would have a good UX of, would you expose those directly and say there's three different levels to go to? I don't know, but
I think
at
it's
least three different
okay.
ways to, huh?
Yeah, I think it'd be okay to make it apparent. I mean, people will try and game it if they know that it's a fully automated system, but it's getting to the point. It's kind of like you're gonna. It's it just take too much work to game it, and by the time you gamed it, you'd be putting in something semi-useful. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like
That's
it's
you made a claim.
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like it's just I think you can get it to where it wouldn't be worth gaming. The other systems where they're not able to analyze the text and then just look at the keywords and stuff, there's a way to game that. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's there's a chance it'll get really good.
thing I would like some feedback on eventually is, I mean, maybe I should do like a little, maybe I should figure out my thoughts around it and do a little presentation, but I'm curious what people think about the model that I've been working on. People may not even, remember the model, but, and, I could say it out loud, but it may not be as helpful to do it visually. But just like the proposition and then left and right columns of basically pro con justifications. And then each of those justifications can either be made up of other propositions, that you can kind of drill down the tree of propositions, or they can be an excerpt to an external reference. Because I mean, I feel like I think in these terms, and so I kind of imagine that other people do. It's like I either think something's true because I saw it somewhere that I thought was authoritative, or I have other reasons that I think are true, and some of those reasons may not be vetted. Like it may just be a belief I hold that I don't know if it's true or not. So I could like break it into sub claims or standalone claims, sub propositions. Does that ring all right with you? Is like those being two ways to make justifications, or does something stand out as like, oh, I don't like that for this reason?
I'd love to see that for sure.
I mean, is that substantially different from just kind of like an argument tree?
I am trying to have an argument tree, so it shouldn't be substantially different.
Yeah. So I think most everyone in this group is kind of settled on, it's a claim or a proposition, and there's pro and cons, and it's a tree, and some people say graph because something kind of a child can affect multiple parents and stuff like that. But that's kind of a nit. I I think when people are trying to be um, not fully intuitively emotional, then they you have to kind of organize it in that structure. So I think that's dead on. I just before I kind of say that, I want to make sure I'm not missing a nuance that might be unique in your style. I do sometimes have a concern with the pros and cons being next to each other, just because I think, although I'm probably wrong, and this is probably a UX thing, easy to fix, is that people might be thinking that they're next to each other for a reason.
Mm,
Because a lot of times people think, well, this is the pro and this is a con to that pro or something. But
mhm,
they have to be in that shape because it's multi levels. They're actually slightly unrelated to each other.
mhm.
Sometimes they're related, but most of the time they're not. So making it visually clear that the rows don't line up has been something interesting. A concern I've had in the past, although I don't know that anyone's ever made that confusion, but
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I was thinking of doing, I haven't put in the time, but just to have those columns scroll separately. So if you
yeah.
scroll down one, the other one stays there, which I did that just because I kind of want to catch people if they're coming there for one side. Like I want to see the pros, I want to see the cons. I want them to get exposed to the higher ranked alternative views. Whereas if they are scrolling down a whole page to get to a pro they're interested in, and now they're getting down to the weaker cons, I feel like that would be maybe less optimal. Although I guess maybe they're also scanning more cons potentially, so maybe that would be good. Hmm.
That'd be an interesting thing to do, is collect all of the different examples of UX on how one has taken a claim and shown the pros and cons, and
Mhm.
just like having a gallery of that to go through. Because yeah, I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, that is an interesting idea. I think didn't Steven started down that route. He hasn't been in our meetings for a while. Did you ever overlap with Steven, Michael?
Yeah, earlier on. Yeah.
Yeah, he came up. Was it him or was it someone else that he found? Or maybe it was just someone I found. I forget if it was him or someone else in the same area, but they talked about there being two different types. And gosh, now I forget what even the two different basic forms were. But there was someone had come up with an academic taxonomy, and I think there were just two top ones. But gosh, what were they? I should be kind of obvious. What are the two different
I,
ways?
I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but I'm thinking one is like showing one layer at a time and one is showing multiple layers at a time. I don't remember if that's the split that you might be referring to.
I forget. I wonder if I can
Or
find
is
it.
it just proposition? Is it like the other kind of thing we talked about a lot was it's the way the child claims interact. Yeah, I can't remember now. It's all on YouTube if you want to watch hundreds of hours.
I'm just gonna ping him and see if he responds.
If only we had a semantic search of all of the transcripts of all of CDL conversations.
That
Yeah.
would be cool.
Yeah, we got enough data now that would be useful.
I feel like I could find it again because I feel like I saw it somewhere. Well, if I find it, I'll share it.
So any
Anything else
other...
to chat about?
What were you saying, Carl?
Oh, I was just wondering if anyone else had another topic to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of things. I guess though I really need to get this video made. um, and I haven't been spending. Michael's been doing a lot of work on the front end stuff, and I haven't been spending enough time. Life's been busy. Um, so I'm not sure if any of it's worth talking about until we have some more examples. I guess I also don't. The other thing might be is like, where are we getting as far as AI being able to craft a tree of claims? You know, give it a topic. I couldn't get it to list, and although I didn't try writing an app that would iteratively post prompts, which would probably be what you need to do it. But getting it to go down more than one level on pros and cons. Um, like it'd list out 5 pros and 5 cons, but it wouldn't go into pros and cons for each of those pros and cons. It didn't seem to understand that concept.
You remember that grapholog I posted?
Yeah.
Someone created. I feel like that is close to that. They still haven't released their source code yet, but I think they're going to. So that seems like a really good starting framework to do that. Maybe might require some tweaks for our exact use case, but it's just taking ideas, concepts, and relating them together and how they were presented as a response from LLM.
I think it really does has a good potential to speed up the initial investigation and also make sure that we're not like missing a big part of any topic. Um, I do think it'll be kind of limited because, like, as Michael and I were going into the keto stuff, we realized, or I kind of realized that there were some popular people that they would. It's funny because they would never like completely say what they think. I don't know if they were concerned of being dogpiled or if they just hadn't found a way to express it yet. But it seems like and one of the things about keto is that um, the or having high triglycerides in bloodstream causes heart disease. But the reason for that is that it gets oxidized. And so if you just have a high throughput of cholesterol in your body, then and it's being absorbed quickly, you know, mechanically just thinking about it, it would make sense that a lower percentage of that would become oxidized. Now, that's a very naive layman's look at it. There could be all sorts of reasons why that wouldn't be true, but why is that not a claim that someone has actually put out there? When they end up saying, well, it doesn't affect people on keto, but they never actually say why, and it's kind of like, why are people stopping short of? And they're arguing all these peripheral points that actually don't matter. Um, I don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is AI won't be able to go much further at some point because there's no data, but it'll get us that first level, which actually takes the most time, which is going through the existing corpus of argument that's out there and at least pulling out the high level stuff. So it could save a lot of time on that, I think. I hope.
Yeah, I agree. I think the whatever's already solidified in the domain, and then we as humans can start doing the creative stuff of trying to find new claims, new questions, new whatever.
Michael, have you coded anything up using the ChatGPT API or anything like that?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Well, I guess I use not Llama, the other one, Langflow, no, Langchain. But by coding, copied and pasted their example and it worked, and maybe modified it slightly because it abstracts away basically everything. So yeah.
Yeah. I just haven't I don't know if I'll have the time, but having that thing to where you have it ask, give me the top 5 pros and top 5 cons, and then for each of those responses, go back and say, give me the pros and cons for those, and just gathering it all up and putting it in a JSON object.
Yeah, there's a side project my friend's working on. It's actually Reactflow as well. And I took that response. What did I do? You have the the content of the node is the whatever topic you want it to say, here, give me the top 5 whatever of it, like the top 5 important things of this. And then it just creates those nodes. That's as far as I've got. But they're not connected or anything. They're just spit out onto the page as new nodes of
and not
single word
reiterating.
responses. Yeah, no, yeah. But that's where we want to go with it. So I'm very interested in doing that.
And the other thing to experiment with is to give it different personalities. You know, you're an activist in the space. How would you phrase it? Or you're a research scientist. What are the detailed things? Or you're a medical doctor. How would you, how would you think about cholesterol moving through the bloodstream? Although it's funny, I do think I saw an AI making a logical inference. An incorrect one, and that's why it made me think it wasn't human. And it claimed it was. I said, "Where'd you get that from?" It said, "I made it up." Uh, okay. And did any of the sources indicate this at all? It was about not ASCII text. It was about one of the There's a peculiar font rendering issue. I said, why are these shapes different from this shape when they're all in the same section? And it said it thought that it was because it would display better. Well, at first it said that they came out in 2 different releases, 2 different versions. Like they'll add different characters in the spec. But actually, it had read the Wikipedia page wrong. They did come out in the same version, all as one set. So then it thought that the positioning would be easier to see, but actually it's worse. So it just didn't seem like a mistake human would make, but it also wasn't just a mathematical or a linguistic leap. So that's what was weird about it. Not that I'm saying they're conscious, but it when you get a couple million or billion, I can't remember what they're called, but the proximities things, it's kind of like, well, maybe they do actually stack on top of each other where you get concepts and the interrelation of concepts, and then it can make accidental inferences. So that was pretty fascinating. I need to write that up, have other people look at it, see if someone can find where it actually got the idea from, because it could have read it somewhere and not known where it came from, but it seemed like an AI dream that was more than just a hallucination.
Very
Although
interesting.
being recently has been like, I'll ask it something or say, oh, here's the, like I was looking for a company that, or I was looking for a library of code to do something, and it said, "Oh, here's its homepage," and linked me to a blog where someone was talking about the homepage. And it's like, that's a pretty simple thing to know that you're at the homepage that matches the exact name of the. So it was just an odd, and it did it consistently, like for 3 or 4 different things. It got one of them right out of 5, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. Although I do think I had it on the creative setting and not the Bing has the where you can set it at 3 different settings.
I've stuck mostly to ChatGPT 4 and Perplexity. I haven't used much of Bing anymore. I find Perplexity quite useful. So
What is perplexity?
it's the same thing except for it's like Bing Chat, but you can search the web and everything, but it's their company doing it. So perplexity.ai, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's good. And you get like 5 free GPT-4s per every 4 hours or something. So
Yeah, I'll have to play with that. Okay, well, I don't have any other good topics. I need to get back to learning Amazon Web Services because I like pain. Because I'm masochistic. And someone's paying me a shit ton of money to do it. So,
Nice. What are you doing in AWS?
I've got a Fortune 100 company that we're trying to deploy a Miro to Airtable integration, and I have to have a backend to handle the secret keys for API access between the two systems. It's just like, I just need something that does this. And it's like, oh, you need a web application firewall and security and tunnels. It's like, okay. It's just a lot of setup just to get a secure API endpoint. I can't remember if Google was this hard, but I may not have gotten the Google web app, the firewalls and everything set up anyway. So they may just be just as hard. But AWS is more like giving you individual Legos and maybe some plastic to make your own Legos. And Google is more like, oh, here's a kit, right? And then Azure is kind of like, oh, here's your finished product. You can name it, and as there are 3 different levels of abstraction.
Yeah, that's helpful. I've only used AWS because I started using it 2017. And it seems kind of like just like the front runner of cloud. And I think
Yeah.
to some degree still is. And it's like if I've invested all this time in learning, how AWS works, and so I have not bothered to do cloud, at least as an external user or the Google Cloud or Azure, because it's like I don't want to relearn these things in a different cloud right now. It takes me enough time to get something working in the cloud system that I kind of understand.
Yeah, it's a bad sign though when your service provider has paid training themselves. Like I can understand other people, but when they charge you, it's kind of like you're now financially incentivized to make it complicated.
True. But to be fair, cloud is going to be complicated, right? I mean, it's not a simple, well, maybe I have Stockholm syndrome. Maybe it should be simpler. Maybe I've gotten too used to it.
The problem is they don't have an incentive to make it simpler. But I mean it's like how much money you're making off the training
Yeah.
if you just kind of spend that money on yeah, yeah. I mean I can see they're definitely making progress because now you can do code-based infrastructure,
Mhm.
which is helpful. So you don't have to go in and write your own scripts every time.
Yeah, I want to translate more and more of Howju's infra into Terraform because it's
Yeah.
really nice. I hate when I go fiddle something in AWS and then months later forget what it was and why I did it and what effect it had.
Yeah, yeah, and I haven't gone straight to Terraform. I'm using the SAM stuff,
Mhm.
server application model. I can't remember if that's what it means. The problem is that
It is.
that is AWS specific, while Terraform I think is more cross cloud.
Yeah, but I mean, with my limited understanding of Terraform, you have to get really into the Terraform to make it cross cloud because each cloud models stuff a little differently. So if you really want it to be cross cloud, you're probably going to have like implementations of each thing that's cloud specific, and then a layer in Terraform that orchestrates on top of it to like say, oh, okay, now I want to recreate this here. So logically, here's what I'm doing, but the details are going to be done by this thing. So I think that was what drew me to it initially too, was this like cross cloud idea. But now that I know a little bit more about Terraform and a little bit more exposure to cloud, I'm like, I don't think this would be that easy to have like a cross cloud implementation. Like, I mean, it would be more doable perhaps than running your own, but it's still still a bit of work, I think.
Yeah, like now I'm writing all my code and I don't allow myself to use any of the cloud specific libraries in a section, and then I have another abstraction layer that's all the cloud specific libraries. So like Amazon DynamoDB, I create my own little abstraction that's just a storage thing, and I can call and get things in and out. So in theory, I could switch out DynamoDB with like S3 or something else, or even another cloud. Of course, I don't have all the bells and whistles, but that's okay until I start using features that aren't common.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, like we're going to AWS for our one customer that's really big, but we've built everything else in Google. So I'm kind of like, I need to be able to go back if I decide not to move our smaller customer and partners over. So it's a pain, but
Yeah.
it is kind of the bleeding edge. So,
What is?
just the cloud,
Hmm.
all the, they're changing so fast now that if we did what we did with the browsers to where they have to go through this change control process, it would, to get to be consistent in standards, it would be a lot slower. But eventually, as these technologies mature, I'm pretty sure there will be abstraction layers. Um, so it's a constant like edge of new innovative stuff that's very specific, and then an abstraction layer moving up and a wave behind it, kind of eating it up. Um, I hope.
Are you going to use one of AWS's services to store the secrets, or
Yeah, like we're using AWS Service Secrets Manager,
yeah?
and if it was in
Ne-
Google, they have a comparable one. But when you abstract it out, because if I don't, as long as I don't use any of their unique features, I would be able to just write a converter in about an hour and use either one in theory.
Yeah.
Um, in theory.
Right. Can you expose it directly, or do you have to write a service in front of it then?
I'm writing a service in front of it. I mean, it depends on what risk level I want to take. I mean, not a service in front of it. I'm just doing a JavaScript abstraction. So I just rename everything and try and think about, okay, if I was going to do this in any cloud, what would I call this function rather than calling it whatever the Amazon specific one is. So I just try and abstract it out wherever I can, knowing that I'm going to miss a few things. And if I did move, it'd be like, well, I'm going to have to go change that. And JavaScript's pretty forgiving. It's not like .NET. So you could, if you went to Google, you could create a shim that would convert all the Google property names into the I'm sorry, all the Google property names into AWS names or whatever, and probably do it anyways. But the thing of having an abstraction in between kind of keeps me. Now I have to think about it every time I want to use a new feature. Oh, is that a cross cloud feature or not? So.
Right.
And Michael, I'm not doing much of this in our code, so you don't have to.
Good to hear.
I was helping out another developer, and he had like layer up on layer up on layer, and I'm like, oh man, you got to shrink some of those down. You're over engineering this his little toy. But there's no right. There is a right answer, but none of us know what it is. We don't have any proof or evidence. Okay. With that, I'll let you guys go.
All right. Hey, Michael, did you see Steven's spreadsheet of listing technology tools?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's where I was going to try and find that paper, because I still can't find what it was, that basic hierarchy. I wonder if Stephen would respond and tell us what it was. All right, well then I won't send it to you.
Yeah, no, if you find that what you're looking for between the two distinctions, definitely send that.
Yeah, oh, I'm just gonna ping Stephen, so he responds.
Okay, until next week.
Okay, see ya, thanks.
See ya.